Nokia has announced the Lumia 925, the successor to its flagship Windows Phone, the Lumia 920, with slimmer metal-rimmed frame, losing the wireless charging coils, moving to an AMOLED screen, enabling the thickness to come down to under 9mm and the weight to under 140 grams. The camera is better too, with a 6-lens design and greater light sensitivity, but most users will have to make do with a sealed 16GB design, since Nokia has signed over all rights to the 32GB version to a UK and European contract carrier Vodafone. All together now, boo, hiss. Other specs are as per the Lumia 920, including the 4.5-inch screen, 1.5GB dual-core processor, 1GB of RAM, and 2000 mAh sealed battery, though you do get some new software, including a Symbian-like always-on clock, a MeeGo-like double-tap-to-wake, plus a new burst camera app. Jolla is a name you'll remember from a few months back, formed from the ashes of MeeGo by a bunch of ex-Nokians. The very first Sailfish smartphone has been unveiled with a 4.5-inch display, a dual-core processor, 8-megapixel rear camera, 16GB of internal memory, plus micro SD and a removable battery. There are also removable back covers which apparently trigger theme changes in the OS and add extra functionality, so for example a back cover with extra capacity for the battery. The bad news is that formal availability for all of this isn't until the end of 2013, though developers can pre-order a preview unit if they want to. Staying with Nokia, I was quite dismissive of the original Series 40-based Asha handsets. They're so low-end in terms of performance and ambition, but there's a new line of Ashas announced, starting with the 501 using tech acquired when Nokia bought the Smarter Phone OS a couple of years ago. The highlight of this tiny phone is its, quote, fast lane system, which attempts to put everything you've done or has happened, want to do now or is being done by someone else, or have to do in the future, all in an integrated timeline that you can browse through. Fine idea, though for most people watching this, I suspect it would soon get overloaded. Is this new Asha platform any better than the old one? I have my doubts. BlackBerry has announced a low-cost, thankfully, version of the QWERTY Q10, the Q5, bringing the new OS X to people with less to spend. There's the same 3.1-inch display, but LCD this time, with 1.2GHz dual-core processor, 2GB of RAM, 8GB of storage, 5-megapixel rear camera, 4G connectivity and a 2100 mAh battery. Definitely not shabby, though jury's out on the build materials, of course. I'm getting a bit confused with the sheer number of models being announced by Sony, but the Xperia ZR does at least seem to have a unique angle, not only being waterproof, but being designed to be used underwater, at least for camera functions, thanks to the shutter button. The ZR is otherwise just a Z, but slightly smaller, with 1.5GHz quad-core processor, 2GB of RAM, 8GB internal memory with micro SD, and starting off with Android 4.1 Jelly Bean. Underwater, eh? Now there's a niche use case. Beleaguered HTC has announced the Desire 600. What, you mean the one wasn't the one? The Desire 600 is slightly smaller and definitely lower spec, with a 4.5-inch QHD display, 1.2GHz quad-core processor, 1GB of RAM, just 8GB of internal storage, but with a micro SD card slot, NFC and other usual specs. There are the Boom Sound dual speakers from the one, yay! And the same blink feed home screen, and there's an 1860 mAh removable battery. Hey, hang on, I'm starting to like the sound of this. Curiously, it's dual SIM, so seems more likely to be a big hit in more Eastern markets. Both SIMs can be active at the same time, apparently. So you liked the Galaxy S4 but still reckoned it was a bit large? Or you were eyeing up the S3 Mini but wanted it to be a little higher spec? Samsung loves to fill in perceived gaps in its lineup, proved here by the announcement of the Galaxy S4 Mini, with its 4.3-inch QHD Super AMOLED screen, a 1.7GHz dual-core processor, Android 4.2.2 out of the box, an 8-megapixel camera, and all those gimmicky, innovative shooting modes from the S4. Specs are pretty high. It has the usual top-end specs, plus NFC and the S4's IR blaster in the top edge, if you like that sort of thing. The system disk is 8GB with 5GB free apparently, which I don't understand. How the heck can the S4 Mini's OS and apps fit in 3GB, where the S4's needed 7GB? Je ne comprends pas. Plus micro SD and 1.5GB of RAM apparently, so not too shabby. Having said quite a few positive things about Samsung's latest TouchWiz and HTC's latest Sense UI recently on the Galaxy S3 and 4 and the One respectively, I found myself somewhat surprisingly back on the 18-month-old, now rather ancient, Galaxy Nexus with its known limitations, sealed 16GB storage, weedy loudspeaker down here, and rather power-hungry processor. Why? Why, I hear you ask? Well, I can think of 6 reasons which you can hopefully find food for thought in, going in order of importance. Number 1, Google Now. I get that it's currently doing more for people in the USA than in Europe or elsewhere, but I keep seeing demo videos of all the things it can do, and I want in. A smartphone should be smart, and some of the proactive things Google Now can do, or at least is about to do, are exactly the sort of thing we'll all be doing more of in the future, where a personal digital assistant, a PDA, is just that. It genuinely assists rather than needing to be nursemaided all the time. Using the Galaxy S3 and S4, plus the HTC One and other non-stock models, it used to drive me mad that Google Now was a bit of a pain to bring up. You had to be on the home screen, and even then you had to do the special long press of the appropriate capacitive key. Or if you're canny, you could put on the Google Now widget, as here, but you still had to be in the right place on the phone. Or you could rely on Google Now's notifications to pop up in the drop-down pane, if you remember to even bring this down. On a stock Android phone like the Galaxy Nexus here or Nexus 4, or on selected other stock-like models such as the Razer I with the virtual control keys, you can see Google Now by just swiping up from the virtual home key whatever application you happen to be in. This is the Plume Twitter client, for example. One swipe, boom. You don't have to think about how to check it, how many taps it takes to bring up Google Now, which home screen you happen to be on, just one swipe, and it's always there. It's just foolproof and future-proof. Of course, you can add in home screen Google Now widgets as well, so you're covered from all directions with whatever Google Now wants to tell you. Yes, I'm drinking the Mountain View Kool-Aid here, but I don't care. It tastes pretty sweet to me. Number 2, there's no bloatware, no manufacturer alternative apps or stores, no extra services always running that I need to keep seeking out and killing. No extra UI layers needing stripping or simplifying. No sensor gimmicks trying to anticipate my every move, all of which take up processor power, RAM and disk space, 3 resources I definitely want maximized. Number 3, keeping the Android experience simple means less bugs and less glitches to come across. Just adapting the old saying slightly, complexity is the enemy of security and reliability. Plus, I'll bet Google put more testing into the core Android apps and OS than manufacturers do into their add-ons and skins. Number 4, stock Android devices like this will get updates much faster. Typically, the Nexus devices will be updated over the air to a new version of Android OS at least 3 months before any others, and usually well over 6 months. It's the sort of shiny new update advantage that any true geek should crave. Number 5, by staying on stock Android, I'm guaranteed 100% app compatibility. Every developer tests on a Nexus device, even if they don't get round to devices from other manufacturers. And if I do see a bug in an app and report it, I know it's not just some weird interaction with the UI or skin. It's a general issue in the app, and I can report it to the programmer. Number 6, backing up and restoring Android phones has always been a bit controversial. Restore nothing and the user is put to a lot of hassle. Restore everything and you might restore the problem that the user did the reset to escape from. But stock Android Nexuses, Nexi, offer the best compromise, restoring your essential setup and most apps and accounts after a reset or device replacement, whereas this is typically rather hit and miss on most other Android hardware. In addition to these 6 reasons, and even though it probably won't apply to me personally, going Nexus, it's trivial to root and install custom firmwares if one ever wants to. No locked bootloaders and no other DRM hassles. Finally, and somewhat intangibly, I do like tying in with the Google vision. I was actually quite impressed by Larry Page's keynote at Google I/O. I thought it was heartfelt and fairly heartwarming, and I could see where he was coming from. Google Plus will be getting loads more functionality generally, and I have a sneaking suspicion that the best of all of this, Google Now, Google Plus, Google everything, will be experienced, certainly first, on stock Android devices. Does all of this mean that I'm not going to play with other forms of Android? Far from it. I have articles planned reviewing HTC Sense and LG's Optimus UI, plus there's the usual cavalcade of review hardware due to come my way. But I did want to set out my thoughts on the pure Nexus way.